All right, there we go. There we go. Finally. Whew. That took longer than it needed to. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. It took had some technical difficulties to kick things off. Of course, tell you what, college Wi-Fi, school Wi-Fi, horrible, absolutely horrible. But we're back. We're here, and let me tell you guys, I'm glad to be back. I'm sorry that we didn't have a live stream last week. If you guys had seen, first off, we were traveling. Up to St. Louis, back down to Little Rock, so across part of the southeast, doing some work there. And then now it's been a very hectic week here at school, of course, running productions, running schoolwork, trying to get everything balanced there. So apologize for not getting that all done, but we are glad to be back with a late night live stream. We got 13 people on the line. Thank you for everybody, to all of you guys, for joining us this late on a Thursday night. Some of you guys I know are out on the East Coast, so it's a little later for you guys. We appreciate you joining us, and we're ready to start talking some college football. So we'll address a couple of things before we start taking your calls. As always, we want to hear from you guys because we have a huge week 4 coming up. Huge week 4 coming up. A week 4 that has college football playoff implications. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen our week 4 college football playoff predictions that, for many, has been very controversial. People didn't like the picks that we put out there. First off, we appreciate all the views. We appreciate all the comments. That certainly boosts our analytics, and we'd love to hear from you guys. But our top 5 biggest games, a lot of people didn't agree with them. We got a huge one tomorrow night between Utah and USC. Big one Saturday morning between Michigan and Wisconsin. And then, of course, as we go through the day, Notre Dame and Georgia, of course, the biggest of week 4. Although many people are going to say that's going to be an absolute blowout. Many people are not giving Notre Dame a fighting chance in that game. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that here in a minute, and certainly talking more about that from you guys. You have a lot of things to say about that. So let's see who we got on the line right now. Emperor of Rome, good to see you, man. Always happy when you're able to join us. One of my top, not only viewers, but our moderator as well. So super happy to have you. Hunter 5657, good to have you as well. Jeff Wilson, Deep Barat, BW, Savage, Cabbage 13. I was watching Houston and Tulane, and Houston was beating the living crap out of Tulane, so I started to turn it off for a little bit. Last time I checked, it was 28-7, maybe 28-14 in favor of Houston, so I turned that game off and found myself watching baseball. The big wild card chase because the postseason starts in October. Cyclone Mitch, good to have you. BW, your school had some dank Wi-Fi, and this one is maybe one of the worst in the entire country. And, of course, the beauty of college is that no one does anything to fix anything. The maintenance crews, of course, horrible. So that is that's just how it goes, I guess. Hunter, the myth, the legend, the grid. I love that. I might have to take a picture of that one later. Ryan McCormick, good to have you as well. Will Burrow, of course, always good to have you. And we'll answer your question, Will, here in a second about Oklahoma State and Texas. Of course, another game that we had in our top 5. Matt Curran, what's going on? Glad to have you. Miami Sports, Barson 188. Florida and Auburn coming up. We'll talk about that as well. Assuming Auburn and Florida can both take care of business over these next few weeks, especially this weekend, more so for Auburn than for Florida. Christopher Smith, also good to have you, man. I'm having a pretty good day so far. I don't have class tomorrow. My weekend starts today. That's why we're up here at 9 o'clock right now. Don't have any class. Don't have to worry about going to sleep too early. So we're glad to be here, and I'm just ready for this weekend and college football weekend to finally get underway. Big one tomorrow night. So, like I said, we're going to take your calls here in a second. We will make sure to address everything in the chat as well. We're not going to disregard anybody in this chat. A couple things that I want to address before we do that. For those of you that have signed up, I apologize for not getting out a newsletter this week. That was something that we were also having technical difficulties with. Just the way it was formatting and the way it was going to be sending out, it wasn't going to work out. But we resolved it. We will have a weekly newsletter coming out next week. We usually send those out on Tuesday. The expert picks come out on Wednesday. And we're going to try to stay as consistent as possible on that. So we apologize for those of you that look forward to getting those and receiving those. Didn't have one this week. We will have one coming out next week at the conclusion of week 4. And also, if you go look in the description, we haven't really highlighted it yet, but we've just made another partnership deal with Reachable. And if you don't know what that is, we kind of highlight it down in the description below, but it is an app where it's a subscription-based site, but you can specifically talk to me. You can basically text me and get some more exclusive content that you wouldn't receive on YouTube. You wouldn't receive from our website, thegridironexpert.com. You would receive solely through Reachable. So if that's something that interests you, we have multiple packages out there. We are really happy that they reached out and partnered with us and that we were able to partner with them. And we're hoping for the best as the rest of this season goes on. So check us out on Reachable. It's an app. You can go to our website, the link that takes you to the Reachable website that talks about the Gridiron Expert there, whatever you want to do. But it's some very good quality content. All right. I got all that taken care of. I hate the business side of this. I would rather talk football than talk about money and stuff like that, although money is great. Deeper Rot, you're watching this and Uncle Lou simultaneously? Well, if I'm in good company with Uncle Lou, I'll say that. The fact that you're choosing to watch us alongside Uncle Lou, that makes me pretty happy. So let's get to it. Let's start taking your calls. This live stream will run around an hour to an hour and a half. Ryan, Mel, good to have you guys. And let's start taking your calls. We're going to put you on hold at times if we have to. We're going to answer your question in the chat as well. And remember, most callers, we're going to hold you to about 5 minutes or so. So just remember that as you're asking your questions and we discuss. And Comic Dude, I see you down there as well. Thank you for joining us, man. Hope everything's going well up at Rutgers, especially out in the marching band. Always good to have you. Call-in number is 901-297-4545. So that is what we'll be waiting for your calls right here. I'm sure we'll get quite a bit here in a minute. And I know Deep Barat, yes, definitely. You want to increase the calls for 10 minutes for good callers, but we're trying to get everybody a fair chance here and trying to get as many callers as we can as possible. Some run over. I'm not going to hang up at 5 minutes, but we're not going to try to go for 15 or 30 as well. So we're going to do that. Let's see what else. Ryan Mel, yeah, finally scheduled one that wasn't during practice, but we're missing out on George Stice. You know, he wanted to come in, but he's got an intramural football game. So sometimes we just have to dance around the question, dance around the schedule, but we're glad that we got quite a bit of you guys on the line. And now let's get ready to talk some football. We got a caller from South Carolina.
Okay, I've sent the caller voicemail. Goodbye.
Well, apparently the Google Analytics lady sent him to voicemail, didn't accept our call. So whoever that was, I think it was Hunter. If that was you, call back. We had another technical difficulty there. Things are going great. Let's see what else we got. McLean Carter's on a concussion protocol. Yeah, for Rutgers, of course, that's not good, per usual. Sikowski is starting on Saturday, so of course McLean Carter, the better of the two, and now you got to sit you got to start Sikowski and sit Carter. Now we got a caller from Pennsylvania. Let's hope this one works. All right, is this? I heard this was Matt.
Oh, hey, what's up? Sorry, it's my first time on here. Oh my God, you actually accepted me.
Of course, Matt. We're gonna accept all the calls that come through, man.
All right, cool.
Well, how's it going? What's on your mind? What do you want to talk about, Matt?
I was interested in watching the Georgia Notre Dame game. So, what do you think will happen there?
Yeah. So, of course, that's a big topic. If you go back, Matt, and you watch, we did a Notre Dame Georgia preview video that came out yesterday. We highlighted that game in our Week 5 predictions, but you know, a lot of people are not giving Notre Dame a fighting chance in this game, and it's wrong. You got a top 10 team. A lot of people say Notre Dame's overrated, and I'm not even going to go that far. They made the college football playoff last year and beat some decent teams to get there. But I do think Georgia wins that game. And like I said in our preview, I think Georgia wins that game by at least 10 points. I think they win by at least 10. With it being in Athens, with Notre Dame's rushing defense being as bad as they are, I don't see that changing in a span of a week, especially when you're going up against one of the best running backs in the SEC in DeAndre Swift, who's averaging nearly 10 yards per carry. So Eli is saying it best. I think Georgia wins but fails to cover the spread, and that's exactly where I'm at too. The spread's Notre Dame by 14, or in Georgia by 14, and I would certainly take Notre Dame in that game.
Yeah, I think they'll win by like over 10 too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking 10 points a cap. I don't think Notre Dame is in a position right now where this game is going to be coming down to the wire in the fourth quarter. I think it could be like a one-possession game. Georgia pulls away late with a late touchdown, a late stop, very similar to how they ended it in 2017, except instead of winning by one, they win by a bigger margin. This game should be, for Georgia, a two-possession victory. I will be shocked if this game is not a two-possession victory for the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
So we're gonna play that by ear. But who are you pulling for in this one, Matt? Who you going for?
I like Georgia. I'm pulling for him. I like Jake Fromm a lot. You know, I just like him.
Just no reason, just like him. Well, I mean, hey, he like I said, if you go back and watch our recap, you go watch our analysis on that video, you know that they've got a great running back in Swift. And I said, even if Notre Dame takes away that run game, they still have one of the best quarterbacks in the entire nation in Jake Fromm. So he'll be able to win this game through the air. Notre Dame, many people think they're no match. They are a match for Georgia. They're just not going to be enough to take them down in Athens.
Yep, I agree.
You got it. Well, Matt, thanks for calling in, man, and we'll hope to hear from you next time.
All right, next talk to you.
You too, man.
All right, cheers.
All right, bye. All right, so that was Matt, of course, talking about Notre Dame and Georgia, which, like I said, is going to be a very hot topic, I'm sure, in this live stream and will be for the rest of this weekend. So we're going to wait and play all that by ear and hopefully get some more analysis and discussion on that. Stephen Smith, what do I think about Iowa State after the first two games? Let me take your question here, Stephen, after I take this call. Hold on.
To accept, press 1. Dispense.
Hey, Hunter, let me put you on hold for 1 second. We'll get right to you.
Okay, that's fine.
Always happy when Hunter's able to call in. First ever caller at the Gridiron Expert. Love hearing from him. But, Stephen, let me tell you, Iowa State, after their first two games, this is a good team. I've said over and over that they are, I believe, the third best team in the Big 12, behind Oklahoma at 1, Texas at 2, and now Iowa State. They should have beat Iowa. And if Cyclone Mitch is still on here, I know he knows that. I think everybody in the country knows that they should have beat Iowa. They weren't able to capitalize on the stops that they were able to get on that defense. Had a great opening touchdown in the second half after such a long weather delay, 2 long weather delays. The game started at 3 o'clock, didn't even end until like 9 o'clock Central Time because of the horrible weather delay. So obviously not ideal for the first ever appearance of game day in Ames, but this is a good team. This is a good Iowa State team, a team that I still think can hang with the elite in the Big 12. But I think by next week, when they face off against Baylor in Waco, that's going to be very telling, Steve. And I think that's going to really show if Iowa State's legit, if they have a chance to contend for a Big 12 title, or if that loss to Iowa really continues to demoralize them and they're unable to contend in the Big 12. That game against Baylor, a very improved Baylor team, that is going to really kind of determine whether or not Iowa State's legit or not. I think they are. I do think they are. I have a lot of faith in Purdy. I have a lot of faith in Matt Campbell. I believe in this Iowa State team. But uninspiring against Northern Iowa, uninspiring against Iowa. They've got some issues that they're going to have to work out before they get into the bulk of Big 12 play. All right, so we're going to take this call from Hunter. I do want to say hi to Tef, of course, one of my favorite guys now joining us on the Gridiron Expert, and John Hopkins as well. Always good to hear from you. We're going to take all of your questions as well. We don't want to miss out on any, but we're going to take Hunter's call and Hunter's question real quick. Of course, always good to hear from him. Hunter, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, and it's 10 p.m. here in Clemson.
Where's it at?
Clemson, 10 p.m.
Clemson. All right. Well, that's awesome, man. All right. They got an easy game against Charlotte this weekend. No problems there.
Yeah. We need to get like a big schedule, like since 2016, our schedule has been brutal.
Yeah. They are the only team, I believe, in the country, or a top 4 team in the country, to not have a game against a top 25 team remaining on their schedule. So
we won against Texas A&M. We won against Texas A&M. Were they ranked?
Well, they were, but we're talking about for the remainder of the season. Yeah, I don't think they have anybody left.
We just need to get like a better schedule. We need to challenge so we're not overrated, because some people are saying that Clemson's overrated.
No, they're still the number one team in the country, Hunter. Yes, you're right. A lot of people do say that, and as Eli says here, Clemson's schedule is a joke, and I will agree with Eli that Clemson's schedule is extremely weak. But as I've said in multiple other videos, the strength of schedule for Clemson is not their fault. It's not Clemson's fault that the ACC is garbage. The ACC is weak. They did schedule Texas A&M, and that's a quality SEC opponent out of non-conference. So they did that. Most teams are not going to schedule multiple Power 5 opponents on their schedule, unless maybe they're an independent, because they want to rack up a couple of easy wins on their schedule. So they think they're overrated, Hunter, but I can promise you, and I'm sure you know this as well, that they're absolutely not. They are still the number one team in the country and are still going to be extremely difficult to beat for any team.
But that was not the question I was trying to ask you. This was the question I was asking.
Yeah, you got it. What's up?
Do you think that LSU will be Alabama this weekend?
Well, they don't play this weekend.
Oh, but do you think LSU will be Alabama?
Yeah, they play much later, back down in November. But I do not think LSU will be Alabama. I do not think LSU would be Alabama. But I will say this: I never thought that. I never thought they would beat them back in the preseason. I haven't thought that up until now. But if LSU wants to dethrone Alabama in the SEC West, this is the year they have to do it. Joe Burrow is playing out of his mind. The defense, of course, is one of the best in the entire nation. If LSU wants to defeat Alabama, they have to do it this year. LSU, guys, is a college football playoff contender. They showed that after their win against Texas, and now they have a very good offense, finally, to go with a defense that has always been strong. The what?
Let me stop you there.
All right.
But Texas, they're Texas. Texas is not very good. And they had a close game against that. So I agree with you on this one. I think Alabama will beat LSU on this one. Because, I mean, that close against a team that ain't even in the top 5, I just don't believe that they'll have a chance against Alabama.
They're going to hang with them, Hunter. I can tell you that. And I know Deep Barat, many of the other Texas fans out there are going to disagree with you, saying that Texas is not that good. But last year, LSU lost 29-0 to Alabama. That will not be the case this season. But that game at Bryant-Denny Stadium in November will really determine, I think, who wins the SEC West. And I think you and I are on the same page. LSU will not beat them, but it's going to be a much closer game than it has been in years past.
Yes, I think that LSU will probably lose this game and probably overtime, but Alabama might be able to pull off a dub with a cheap shot field goal.
Well, we've seen that in years past, Hunter. We've seen some very thrilling matchups, and if that's the case, that would just be another great saga between the Crimson Tide and the Tigers. And that's certainly what we're hoping for, because a game that you pit two what should be top 5 teams in November, a team that's supposed to be 2 of the elite in the SEC West. In recent years, it hasn't shown that. So if that's the case, I would be absolutely thrilled.
But just to make fun of Alabama fans, if you guys miss that cheap shot field goal, drop the kicker. Just sign a kicker, please.
I'm sure Emperor of Rome, as he said earlier, definitely would love to do that, because their kicking woes are getting worse and worse every single year.
I mean, it all started with the kick 6 in 2013 against Auburn, and then it just went downhill.
Yeah, it's obviously something for Alabama. It hasn't been a cause of concern for them as of late, but they definitely need to get themselves a kicker here pretty soon. And I'm sure Nick Saban has tried to address that. It just takes some time to get that done. So they're right. It remains to be seen. Alabama special teams are going to be key for them in some of their closer games down the stretch. So we're going to play that by ear, but great question. Great question, Hunter. We're going to wrap it up right here to get some more callers in, but thank you for calling in, man. Like I said, it's always good to hear from you.
All right. But Nick Saban needs a new head coach like he needs a new kicker.
All right, man. You got it. Well, thank you for calling in, and you have a great night, man.
You're welcome.
Bye. All right, guys. Of course, that's Hunter, 5657. Always enjoy hearing from him. Like I said, the first ever caller on the Gridiron Expert. We love hearing from a very diverse crowd. Young, old, different fans across the board. It's always a blast. Rosenberg, Texas. I know who this is, and we're going to take his call, but we're going to put him on hold for a second. All right, hold on. Hey, Deep Rob, we're going to put you on hold for 1 second, man. All right, so I knew I've recognized the address now from Rosenberg, Texas. I know it's Deep Barat, who always brings some very solid insight to our conversation. But I want to address some of the guys in the comments. We've had a lot, so I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody here. Tef, I promised you I'd come back to your question. Why is Michigan State favored on the road against a team that they lost to the last 3 meetings? And I agree with you on that, Tef. It boggles my. I mean, and I'm shocked by that. I'm very confused by that as well. Not only are they favored on the road, they're favored on the road by 9.5 points last time I checked against Northwestern. They have lost to Northwestern the past 3 meetings. They haven't just lost them at Northwestern, but at Michigan State as well. Hunter Johnson, a good quarterback, yes, but we got to keep in mind, too, Michigan State just lost at home to Arizona State. This game has been very close in recent years, and for those of you that have signed up for our expert picks, you know, but I'm going to give you one little sneak peek right now. If I'm betting, I'm picking Northwestern. I'm picking Northwestern. It's a double-digit, nearly a double-digit underdog for Northwestern at home, and they're not that bad of a team. They've struggled against Stanford. They struggled against UNLV, but Michigan State hasn't looked like a playoff contender themselves. So that's who I would go with in that game. Very shocking to see that as well. When I was looking through the spreads earlier this week before we released our expert picks on Wednesday, it definitely kind of caught me by surprise just to see how large it was. Going through the rest of the chat here before I get to Deeper Odds call. I want to make sure we're not missing anybody. Cyclone Mitch, you said you can't call in, which is always a shame. We'd love to hear from you. But if you could, you talk about how Kansas is doing decent and how they have the most underrated 1-2 punch in college football with Khalil Herbert and Pooker Williams. Pooker Williams, absolutely. And Herbert did a phenomenal job last week against Boston College. And, guys, that's another thing. The fact that Les Miles had such a quick turnaround for the Jayhawks, going from losing to Coastal Carolina and then defeating Boston College. And Boston College, I get, they're not like a top 10 team in the country, but going on the road to Boston College, shutting down A.J. Dillon in an offense that already looked better in 2019, a defense that's usually strong under Steve Addazio, and as 21-point underdogs beating the Eagles by 24, that's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And they won that from their running game, absolutely, but their passing game took a major step forward. I believe it was Carter Stanley at quarterback? Unbelievable performance from Les Miles. Now, can they keep that up in Big 12 play? They've got a game against West Virginia this Saturday that will certainly get them going on the right track, but West Virginia just annihilated North Carolina State. Once again, not like a top 25 team or anything, but still an impressive win over a Power 5 opponent. Stephen Smith, always happy to answer your question, man. Thank you for joining the stream. Keep bringing it up, man. We love to hear from you guys. We love to answer your questions. So I'm never going to diss anybody maliciously or on purpose. We want to answer your questions. Going through the rest here. Eli, of course, always good to see you. Tef, always good to see you. And I hope you were able to take that answer that we gave you about Northwestern there. Blacklist, DCUO, good to have you here as well. And he's agreeing with me about the ACC scheduling. It's not Clemson's fault their schedule's weak. Florida State should be all right. Virginia Tech used to be good. And if the ACC wasn't terrible, Clemson's schedule wouldn't be as much of a joke. He's exactly right. You look across the board, guys, Alabama's schedule's been an absolute joke. Outside of the SEC slate, who have they scheduled non-conference-wise? New Mexico State, Southern Miss, and now Duke in the regular season, in the opener of the season. They've probably got someone down the road, I don't know, like Western Carolina or someone like that. That's not a good schedule, strength of schedule. So don't sit here and criticize Clemson's schedule. They can't help the way other ACC teams are playing. It's not their fault that they're not in a conference with Alabama that has to play teams like Texas A&M, Auburn, LSU, and guys like that. It's not Clemson's fault. And I'm not a Clemson fan trying to defend them, but I'm defending them in the sense where people are criticizing the Tigers for their strength of schedule. They actually scheduled a good Power 5 opponent in the non-conference. Many other teams didn't do that. Show me a handful of teams that scheduled good Power 5 teams out of non-conference. There aren't that many. So I want to keep that in mind as we're going through. It's not Clemson's fault that the ACC is, as many of these people have said, absolute garbage. It's not Clemson's fault. Let's see who else we got here. And Deeper Rye, if you're still listening, I have not forgotten about you. I just want to make sure we're caught up because I know this conversation between you and I usually goes a little long. And so I want to make sure that I don't get too far behind on these comments. Tef, yes, Michigan State's defense is extremely solid. We saw that against Tulsa. We saw that against, I believe, Western Michigan. We saw that against Arizona State last week. Not good enough to stop Arizona State, but still good enough to hold them to 10 points and then lose in very controversial fashion. They're good. Northwestern's offense isn't clicking under Hunter Johnson, but I like them getting the points at home against a Michigan State team that, in my opinion, has struggled thus far through 2019. And then, of course, Eli is talking a lot about UCF, of course, a major proponent for Group of 5 teams. And I do want to talk about UCF here in a minute because and their college football playoff chances, because there are some things that maybe you guys haven't heard about on that as well. So, Deep Rock, of course, I haven't forgotten about you. I think we're all caught up here except for one question. I want to make sure I didn't miss it. I meant to come back to it, but I know you're still here. The Marshall 25-25. If I could pick any upset this weekend, what upset pick am I most confident with? Marshall, I've got to take a look at the schedule, man. We got our top 5 games up on the board, and one upset that I do have is USC taking down Utah. And that's one that's really triggered a lot of controversy thus far, as people disagree with that. And Utah deserves to be in the top 10. They're a solid team. They're looking great. But they don't play well at the Coliseum. I know JT Daniels is out. I know they just lost to BYU. But like Tef just said a second ago, Vegas knows something. Utah's only favored by like 3.5 or 4 points. It's not a lot to me. For a game that people think Utah's going to run away with, 4 points isn't a lot. The FPI also knows something as well. They have USC actually favored by over 50% in this game against the Utes. They know something as well. And I like USC in that game. That's one big upset I'm taking. I can look through the rest of the schedule and try to take a look, maybe give you a handful more of upsets. But that's one that I like. That's one that I've publicly come out with, and that's one that I'm going to stick by as of right now. You could say Michigan over Wisconsin. That's another one that's caused controversy as well, but that's not necessarily an upset since Michigan is, of course, higher ranked than the Badgers, even though they are underdogs going on the road to face Wisconsin. So, all right, we're caught up on that. I'm going to take Deeper Rod's call right now, and of course, we're going to come back to the chat and answer the rest of your questions. And guys, once again, as you're coming in through this video, make sure to hit that like button. As our guy Prince would say, as Emperor of Rome would always say, we've got 19 viewers, we should have 19 likes. Now, I'm not going to say that, but they say it. So make sure you hit that like button. We do appreciate that, and that helps us out a whole lot. So make sure you're hitting that as you come in to this video. All right, Deeper Rock, sorry for the wait. How you doing tonight?
Lovely. It's good to finally catch up. I don't know, it's probably been a long time since you had a college show. But how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, it's been about 2 weeks. Like I said, we were traveling a lot last week, so we were never in a good position to finally sit down and have a call-in show, but we're glad we were able to do one tonight.
Yeah, where do you travel, by the way, just really quickly?
Last week, we traveled up to St. Louis. Then we traveled back down to Little Rock. Every now and then, we'll travel out down to Georgia, Alabama, Texas, a lot of places down here in the southeast. And then in the summer, we usually branch out and either go way out west or way out east when we have a little more time.
For football season?
Usually for football season, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, very interesting insights for sure. That's why I love what your colleague says. You say a couple of interesting things this week. And I've kind of seen your predictions, so we don't want to waste too much time on that. But I just want to kind of hear your thoughts on the national picture right now. It seems like, just the way things are kind of structured, it's very, not a likely possibility, but a very good possibility that two SEC teams might get it. But realistically, it's probably going to be 1, 2. The situation of, say, LSU going 11, and let's say a Big 12 champion, let's say Texas, who directly lost to LSU, do you think that they would still get a conference champion? Or was that kind of like the gray area where the company doesn't know what to do yet?
So repeat that question again. You were saying something about LSU and the conference champion?
Yeah, like a 12-1 conference champion.
If Texas was that 12-1 conference champion with a lone loss to LSU?
Yeah, and let's just say that there's only one spot for the playoffs
Sure, yeah. Now that would certainly pose a great question, and obviously a huge debate on Selection Sunday. Um, that to me would kind of pose a similar scenario as to what happened last year for Oklahoma. Oklahoma lost to Texas, and then beat them again, or got their revenge in the Big 12 championship. So they were a 12-1 team, and slipped into that fourth spot of the college football playoff. For Texas here, I can't imagine. I'm responding to a comment here, but I cannot imagine the committee leaving out a 12-1 Texas with a loss to a good LSU team who, if they beat Alabama, should be the SEC champion. Now, if you look at the college football playoff, when you're talking,
let's say LSU goes 11-1 and then they lose to Alabama, but would they still get in because they went 11-1 and beat Texas directly?
Yeah, I cannot see it if it came down to the final spot. Let's assume Clemson gets in. Let's assume Alabama gets in.
So the conference champion will always get the benefit of the doubt.
Absolutely, yeah, of course they will. They will, okay. Assuming they are obviously a solid conference champion, a one-loss or undefeated conference champion. So we'll assume Clemson gets in. We'll assume Alabama gets in. We'll assume that whoever your third team may be, maybe it's Georgia, who runs the table and loses their lone loss to Alabama. Maybe they're in at 3. I don't see anybody at the Pac-12 getting in. I don't see Notre Dame getting in because I don't see them running the table either as an undefeated or a one-loss team. Texas, if they are 12-1, a Big 12 champion, lone loss to LSU, who's 11-1, if I were on the committee, I would 100% put in Texas. There's no doubt in my mind Texas deserves to get in.
Okay, cool. That makes a lot of sense. Speaking of which, I just wanted to discuss a couple of really quick points. The Pac-12 is kind of cannibalizing itself again this year, with each team kind of beating the other team up again, and it looks like it's another unfortunate year for that conference. However, I want to mention one team that really is standing out right now. That's the Utah Utes.
Yeah.
I think Utah has a legitimate possibility of making the college football playoff if they go 12-1 or better. Right? I mean, you don't know; they might run the table, but Utah is probably the best possibility now, based on what I see. But I think the problem with a team like Utah is they always drop a game that they shouldn't drop.
Yep.
And that's kind of what's causing the conference to lose its value. And we thought Oregon was really good this year too, but they lost to Auburn, right?
Right.
And then they're probably going to lose one of Washington, maybe Stanford, and on the road. I mean, it's not easy for Oregon either.
Yeah, you look at you said they're basically cannibalizing each other, and it's reminded me a lot of what the SEC West was like a few years ago. The SEC just continued to beat themselves up in terms of their playoff chances. There was a time where Mississippi State and Ole Miss and Alabama were all like in the top 10, and they were just beating up on each other and kind of ruining chances of a potential representative in the college football playoff. Now, of course, it never happened. Alabama always got in, but in this case with the Pac-12, you're right. I think Utah's only way of getting in the college football playoff is running the table, maybe only losing one game, and maybe that one game has to come to a good team. Maybe like that would probably have to be in the regular season against Washington, I would assume, or early like this Friday. If they fell to USC, who's not a bad team in my opinion, not great, but they're not bad. If they fell to USC and then ran the table the rest of the way, you can make a case for the Utes getting in. But you're right, that I don't think that's going to happen. Like Eli said, Washington lost to California. That really put a damper on Washington's hope of getting in there because they'll slip up somewhere down the road. Same for Oregon. They fell to Auburn. They've got to travel to. Stanford
has lost twice.
Stanford's lost twice. So they're already done. They got annihilated by UCF. They got annihilated by USC. So Stanford absolutely out of the picture. Washington's lost to Cal. They're probably going to have to run the table again if they want to. I think they're going to fall somewhere down the road, whether that's to Utah, whether that's to Oregon. Oregon has to travel to Washington. So once again, the schedule for all of these teams does not line up where someone's going to run the table the rest of the way. And so you have a chance for their Pac-12 champion, whether that's Oregon, Washington, Utah, probably your top 3 right there, could very well be a 2-loss champion, and there's no way that a 2-loss Pac-12 champion is going to get into the college football playoff.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the coming weeks. The other point I want to make here is I think Ohio State is looking very dangerous. I think they're looking very good. I think we might see a Wisconsin versus Ohio State Big Ten championship game this year. But again, I could be wrong, but it's looking like that. And I didn't see your video if you had one or not, but what's your pick for Wisconsin, Michigan?
Yeah, so that was certainly one that a lot of people disagreed with when I predicted it. I'm sticking with my prediction that I made in the preseason. That is, I'm picking Michigan to win this game at Wisconsin. And look, Wisconsin is looking like one of the best teams in the entire country right now. And the fact that they get to host Michigan, that just, strengthens their case for many that are picking Wisconsin to win that game. I understand that. But the way I'm looking at it in this game, and the reason I'm picking Michigan is, yes, Wisconsin's coming off a bye week, but so is Michigan. Wisconsin hasn't played anybody, in my opinion. They beat USF, South Florida, and they beat Central Michigan. Both shutouts, both blowouts. I get it. Michigan struggled.
But neither has Michigan.
They haven't, but I do think that those opponents that Michigan played, especially in Army, is better than definitely better than what Wisconsin faced.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but I just want to make a quick point here is that, the eye test right now just looks a lot better from Wisconsin. And I'm not just saying that because I don't like Michigan or whatever people want to call them. It's just the eye test looks really, really good for them. I think they've solved a lot of problems that they previously had, because they had a couple of good seasons past, most recently 2 years ago. But they lost the Big Ten championship game. They were left out of the college football playoff. My point is that I do think that it's going to be a close game. It's going to be an interesting game. But I don't think it should be a surprise if they win, right? To anybody. And then, final question I have for you. What are your thoughts on the Texas versus Oklahoma this year? Well, obviously there's round one that's guaranteed at the Cotton Bowl. I think that Texas is going to come up with that win, not just because I'm a Texas fan, but I think that Texas usually likes these types of Red River rivalry games, like underdog. They won last year, have everything to prove. And I don't necessarily think that they're back in the sense that they're going to be a legitimate college football playoff contender unless they run the table, but I do think they're a good enough team to beat Oklahoma at least once this year. And, maybe, some other dark horse coming up in the Big 12. But what are your thoughts so far on what you see?
Well, look, I picked Texas to beat Oklahoma back in the preseason. I picked them to beat them in the regular season. I just had them falling to the.
Still sticking by that?
For now, I am. But the only thing I will say on that, and of course, things can change in the span of a few weeks, depending on, of course, Texas fares against Oklahoma State and the rest of their slate leading up to Oklahoma, and the same for the Sooners. But the biggest thing for Texas in that first game against Oklahoma is they have to shut down Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, and that's super generic to say. Yes, you have to shut down the quarterback. But I will say that Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, is the front runner for the Heisman right now. He has been nearly unstoppable against every team that he's played. And I know Oklahoma hasn't had the most difficult schedule either. They play like South Dakota, UCLA, and Houston. But if you watched last year, and I know you did, Texas jumped out to a huge lead over Oklahoma and really kind of kept Kyler Murray in check. But in that fourth quarter, Murray just went off and led them to that comeback before, of course, Texas nailed the game-winning field goal. So I'm going to go out on a limb right now and say what I have seen from Jalen Hurts, he's doing better already than Kyler Murray. And that is, for me, if I were Texas, is a cause of concern. They got annihilated by Joe Burrow through the air, and Joe Burrow is not nearly as mobile as Jalen Hurts is. So it's going to be very difficult, I think, for Texas to keep him in check. But Texas has the offense to keep up with that game. It's a Red River showdown. It's a Red River shootout. And it's going to be a lot of points scored, as it's been in recent years. And Texas certainly has the capability to keep up in a game like that.
Yeah, I do think that Texas.
For now, yes. that defense stop the best player in college football, a guy that can not only beat through the passing game like we saw with Joe Burrow, but
okay. It's an interesting prediction. I do agree with you. That's definitely a favorite. But I would watch out for Trevor Lawrence as well. I think they'll probably be in the mix. Jonathan Taylor as well from Wisconsin. But yeah, man, I think it'll be interesting. And in these types of shootout games, I think it's just who can stop the other one. And I think the Texans can at least get a couple stops in the game. Maybe one, maybe two, maybe three, who knows. Also going to score a lot of points on Oklahoma. So it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening there. But yeah, I appreciate you taking the call, man, and I fully expect the Hokies finally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely going to get these releases. If we lose, then the season's over. No college football playoff.
Absolutely, you're 100% right on that. But hey, Deeper Right, always good talking to you, man, and thank you for calling in, man. Always good talking to you.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, so of course that was Deeper Right. I had a couple of guys call in. Sorry we weren't able to take that call right at that moment. I need to get a screener. I need to get a guy that comes in and screens our call so we have them ready to go as we're going through this live stream. But we're not that fancy yet, not that high tech yet. But we are getting a call from Little Rock, Arkansas. We're ready to take it, and then I will get to everybody in the chat. I do want to hear all of y'all's questions as well. But we're going to take this next call. Won't take too long.
From
Nicholas Thompson.
to accept, press 1. Call from. To accept, press 1. To send okay. I sent the caller voicemail. To accept, press 1.
Is this Nick?
Hello?
Is this Nicholas Thompson?
Hey, man, what's up? You're live on YouTube right now,
Do what?
I'm not at the wrong number, man. Sorry.
I'm sorry I couldn't hear you there.
Yeah, so, Nebraska heading into the Big Ten championship, man. I think they got a chance, but, just after what happened in Colorado, everybody gave up on us. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think everybody was right to give up on Nebraska. I know it's something that you maybe don't want to hear, but yeah, it is. It's something that you need to hear, that Nebraska needs to hear. Look, I had them beating Colorado. I was very high on Nebraska. I was very, very high on Nebraska and very excited to see Scott Frost and this new offense and everything kind of coming together for the Cornhuskers. And then they laid an egg, blowing a 17-point lead to the Buffaloes. Now, that's not a conference game, as we all know. So their Big Ten title hopes certainly are not over. Anybody that thought they were going to make the playoff, I did not. But anybody that thought that those hopes are over. But they're still in the Big Ten title hunt, absolutely. I think this will be a very telling game against Illinois, a team that just lost to Eastern Michigan, so obviously not one of the best in the Big Ten. But that is a team that has been bringing a lot of solid transfers under Lovie Smith. Nebraska is only like a 14-point favorite. It's on the road. If they go in and take easy care of Illinois, then maybe you can see obviously a sign of improvement. But Nebraska's offense has not been what I thought they were going to be. They weren't that way against Colorado. They weren't that way against South Alabama. They just haven't looked the part like many people were giving them hype for in the offseason. So they're still in the Big Ten title hunt. I think it's next weekend that they host Ohio State. And that, of course, will be a very telling game. It's going to be a wonderful, energetic environment. But, that's going to be very telling. If they keep that game close, even if they lose, they're still in the hunt. They're maybe on the right track. Obviously, if they win, they definitely should be taken seriously. But if they get blown out, then they don't deserve to be, I don't really think, considered for anything.
Yeah, it's been a tough couple of years, especially being in Nebraska, with the Mike Riley era and everything.
Yeah.
Besides Nebraska, what are your thoughts on, the college football playoff and everything? Who do you think has the best chance? Because, when you're talking about, Houston, Oklahoma, and Alabama, all this other stuff, to be honest, I'm sick of Alabama always winning. I'm sick of Clemson always winning. I want a new team to get in there and prove that they can beat. And Nebraska's not there yet. But who do you think has the best chance of that?
Yeah, look, obviously for me, I think the locks for the college football playoff right now are Clemson and Alabama. I think those are the two teams that you can almost guarantee are going to make the playoff. And unfortunately for us, and I'm a big supporter for expanding the playoff, that's half your playoff right there. And if Clemson and Alabama are already locks, that's 2 out of 4. You're 50% filled. So now, who's your 3 and 4? I think Georgia is certainly in contention. Especially if they take easy care of Notre Dame this weekend. If they blow them out of the water, that's going to show they're even a bigger contender. Florida losing Felipe Franks, that's a big loss for them. So maybe that strength, that threat of Florida beating the Bulldogs has kind of gone. So I think Georgia's biggest test remaining this year are Notre Dame, Florida, and Auburn. And they should take care, I think, of all those except for Auburn. That's the one team that I think they could struggle with. They're in there. Ohio State certainly in contention there. Michigan is in there, but if Michigan falls in this game to Wisconsin, they're out. And as Deep Barat and I were talking about earlier, I don't think the Pac-12 has any chance of getting a representative in there. So, you've got a lot of teams, man, that are in the hunt for those final 2 spots. That's what makes the race for the college football playoff so exciting, is because Clemson and Bama are going to get in, unless something crazy happens. But then you've got teams like Georgia, LSU, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas. So many teams that we've mentioned that can make a run for those final 2, and it's going to be a really tough spot to try to get in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just one more thing before I let you go, because I know that you got other people wanting to call you a delay. So tomorrow, next week, here in a couple of weeks, we got Ohio State and Nebraska. We got like you said earlier, we got this huge energizing environment where 6:30 start Central Time on ABC. It's going to be one of those big games where Nebraska's going to be hopeful, and they're all hoping they're not getting blown out 30-62 like a few years ago.
Right.
But how do you think this game will go? Depending on what happens against Illinois, how do you think this game will go? Like, score prediction, whatever you can do.
Back in the preseason, man, I predicted Nebraska to pull off that upset, and people lost it. People thought I was insane. And then, of course, after Nebraska fell to Colorado, people came back to that, and they were like, "Oh, you're even more of an idiot that Ohio State, that you think Nebraska can beat Ohio State." But I like what the Marshal just said right here. Is Ohio State the big deal? Are they the real deal? Have they been tested yet? And really, they haven't. Ohio State beat Florida Atlantic, Cincinnati, and now Indiana. So they really haven't been tested. Nebraska's at least had a little bit more of a test, but they unfortunately lost that test. I tell you what, I don't see. I'm not changing that prediction yet. To people maybe disagree with that, but I'm not changing my Nebraska prediction of upsetting Ohio State yet. Maybe I might change it after watching both teams this week. But for now, I'm going to keep Nebraska winning that game. And if they do lose that game, I don't see them losing by more than 14 points.
All right. Yeah, thank you, man. But our red burns brighter, but thanks for talking, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for you calling in.
Yep.
All right, have a good night. All right, so talking a little bit of Nebraska football there. For our next caller, whoever that may be, I know Nicholas Thompson, you were trying to call in, and I apologize. We got screwed up on the lines there. So if you want to call back in, please do. I'm going to go through the chat, make sure we talk about all of that and everybody that's been mentioning stuff in here, and then we'll take the next call. Just be prepared from Bristol, Rhode Island, that you will be on hold just for a little bit. Hey, Hunter, we're going to put you on hold for 1 second, all right?
Yeah, no problem.
All right, thanks, man. All right, so we got Hunter on the line all the way from Rhode Island. I want to go through all of this because we've got some good comments. We've got some really, really good comments. So I want to see what we've got here. Stephen Smith, if you're still on the line, what are my thoughts on the Big 12 after Kansas beat Boston College and West Virginia beat North Carolina State? Well, Stephen, let me tell you what. Kansas and West Virginia are going at it this Saturday. So 2 teams that were projected to struggle, both by me and other analysts, are getting to go at it on Saturday, and have both obviously shown major signs of improvement from week 1 to week 3. West Virginia struggled against James Madison. Kansas struggled against Coastal, Central Connecticut State or whoever it was. Kansas lost to Coastal Carolina. West Virginia got annihilated by Missouri. And now West Virginia kills NC State and Kansas kills Boston College. So it's going to be pretty wild. It's going to be pretty wild. Those two teams aren't going to contend for a Big 12 title. Those guys are TCU, Oklahoma, Texas, and Iowa State. Those are the guys that are going to compete for a title. But maybe the Big 12 can be a little more competitive across the board. Teams like Kansas and West Virginia, after seeing these previous performances, maybe they can give teams like the Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa State's, TCU's more of a fight where we don't walk into that Saturday and say, oh, that's a guaranteed win for these elite Big 12 teams. If they can continue to improve, it could be a very unpredictable season for the entire Big 12. And that's what I want to see. I hate walking into any Saturday and knowing what's going to happen. I mean, of course, if it's a cupcake team, yeah, we know what's going to happen. But I hate walking into seeing a conference game and knowing that team is going to win. Like 99% sure that team's going to win. You always got to give them a chance. Never give someone a 0% chance in anything. But I just hate having to deal with that. Emperor of Rome made a comment earlier. As you can see, pink shirt. He asked, am I wearing pink because of Wendy? And absolutely. The support. First off, and we talked about it a lot. And there comes a time, guys, when you have to stop talking about it. When something as terrible as that happened for Blake Anderson and his wife, when something like that. But there comes a time where it becomes good to stop talking about things like that, and it becomes good to move on, put it in the rearview mirror, and try to move on. Because the longer you dwell on it, the longer it hurts, and the longer it bothers you. But absolutely, the support that Georgia showed for Arkansas State, of course, for many of you, that's where I attend school. It was unbelievable. The pink out that they did against Arkansas State was unbelievable. The support that not just this campus, not just Georgia, but the entire nation showed Blake Anderson and his family was just unbelievable. And once again, just showing that football is more than just a game. We put so much stock into what happens out there on the field. And I said this in previous videos, now I don't mind repeating it again. We put so much stock on what happens out on the gridiron and what the ranks are and how bad you beat a team. But, these coaches, they've got lives. They got families. For some of these players, they have the same thing. Some of these players have families. They've got to deal with academics. They've got to deal with their own family lives as well. I mean, their mothers and their fathers and their siblings, but maybe some of them already have wives and kids. And so that's something we have to keep in mind as well as we watch college football. We love it. We only see what happens on the field, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. And so the support that he has been given is just unbelievable. We're all heartbroken still. Mama Wendy, as they called her here in Jonesboro, but he's doing a great job. Like always in our thoughts and prayers, and he's handling this better than any person that I think could handle it, and better than I definitely could, and better than anybody else that I've ever seen. So a lot of credit to him, and a lot of support that continues to stem from us here on campus and from everybody else across the nation. So just unbelievable. But yes, of course, that's why I've been wearing pink and been wearing pink for a while now, over the past few weeks here on campus. Let's see what other comments we have here. I'll throw in the call-in number here again. Hunter, I know you're still on the line. We haven't forgotten about you. I just want to make sure we're hitting everything here. Comic Dude, I saw your suggestion. Put the number in the description. Brilliant idea. Don't know why I didn't think of that, but great idea. Next call-in show, which will be next week, we'll absolutely make sure to get that done. Let's see what else we have here. Mark TR, good to have you on the line with us. Does Willie Taggart finish the year? Does he get an early curtain call? I think he finishes the year unless they just start to tank. What are they now? 1-2, barely survived Monroe, lost to Boise, lost to Virginia. So unless they're sitting somewhere like at 1-5 or something like that, yeah, I think he gets an early curtain call. But outside of that, he probably finishes the year, but he ain't going to be around unless Florida State goes on a huge winning streak and wins at least 7 games. He's out. I had him at 8. I think he needs to win 8, but at least 7. I think he's done. So, yeah, Willie Taggart, of course, not a good hire by Florida State. I don't know anybody that ever thought that was a good hire for the Seminoles. Yeah, it's definitely time for him to get out of Tallahassee. Eli can't figure out Maryland, blow out Syracuse, and lose to Temple. And Tef making a good point. Yes, we did predict that. I took a lot of pride in that, I'm not going to lie. I had Maryland starting 2-0. I had them beating Syracuse. Many people didn't think that was going to happen. Then when I had them losing to Temple, people didn't. They thought I was crazy. It's happened the past 2 seasons for Maryland. They beat Texas. They beat a weaker opponent. They lose to a group of 5. Knew that was going to happen this year in 2019. It came true. Was very, very happy about that. Temple's defense just really stepped it up in that game. And it was on the road. That, of course, plays a factor as well. BW, my prediction for San Diego State and Utah State. If I'm not mistaken, that game is at San Diego State. They're going to have to get a better passing game going. Juwan Washington can't do it all by himself. Utah State having one of the better quarterbacks in the group of 5, maybe even the nation, in Jordan Love. I like San Diego State in a close one there. More experience on both sides of the ball and a very, very strong defense. Very, very strong that I think is able to shut down Jordan Love and gets a huge win in the Mountain West. So I like that one. I like San Diego State narrowly against the Aggies. Lane Siebert, what's going on? Glad to have you here as well. Going through the rest as well here. And, yeah, I think we are, for the most part, all caught up. So we're going to take Hunter's call right now. Hunter, I'm sorry for having you on hold for so long.
You're good. I'm still here.
All right, good deal, man. Well, how's it going?
Good. How you been?
Doing all right, man. Glad to be back. Glad to get going again.
Yeah. So I don't know if you talked about this while I was on hold, but what a classy gesture by Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs this past Saturday. That was so touching to see the pink out and that tribute to Arkansas State coach and his wife, who unfortunately passed away. But it's moments like that that make me love college football. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And we did address that just a few minutes ago. Emperor of Rome said, was asking about my pink shirts. Like, are you wearing that for Wendy? And absolutely. I said, that's truly, for me, it's so much more in the game, Hunter. And we focus so much on the wins and the losses and what happens out there on the field, but we kind of forget that these players and these coaches have lives outside of football. So to see such a classy gesture from a team, and as Blake Anderson said, from people and a university that didn't know him, that didn't know his wife, and could have just said, "Oh, we're sorry," and moved on. To do something like that was just truly, truly unbelievable. And like I said, it makes you love college football. It makes you, see they're still good in the world,
Absolutely. So now transitioning to Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Man, I'm nervous. I watched the Furman game this past Saturday, and they did not look good at all. They were losing at halftime, 14-3, and the turnovers are just killing us right now. What do you see? I called a few weeks back, and I said that there might be a possibility they don't make a bowl game. What do you think now?
Look, let me respond to Nick here, but look, you're right. Many people, including myself, they should have lost to Furman. I think we know that. We know they probably should have lost to Furman, being down 14-3 at halftime, turning the ball over, not playing well. The possibility for a bowl game is still there, Hunter. I'm gonna pull up the schedule right now on my phone. I just want to see what it's looking like. I don't have it memorized, but the possibility of getting to a bowl game is still there. And as you said, I think you've commented before, do it for Bud Foster. The defense needs to step up, and you would hope that they would, with this being his final year. There are winnable games on this schedule for Virginia Tech. I'm still trying to get it up here, but I think you're going to need, obviously, for Bud, his defense has not played extremely well. 17 points to Furman and Old Dominion, but only winning those games by 14 and then 7, and then losing their opener to Boston College where they allowed 35. But Virginia Tech, I can't remember who it was last year that they lost to early on, and you might remember as a bigger fan than I am.
Old Dominion.
Right, Old Dominion. They fell to Old Dominion. I'm sure all the alarms were going off, and everybody was freaking out. And then they came back and took care of Duke in dominating fashion at Duke, And I know it wasn't a great year for Virginia Tech last year. I get that. But still, I think there's still time. And look, who you've got Friday night or next Friday night is Duke at home. So you struggle against Old Dominion, you struggle against Furman, you get a bye week, and you come back home to face off against Duke. I just feel like it's another recipe for a huge and big performance to correct things and take down a Duke team that's not bad, but certainly isn't elite.
Right. And, in fairness to Bud, I thought the defense played very well. It's just the offense committing those turnovers has put them in bad field position where, the defense, they can't stop them, 2 or 3 times when they're, have 30 yards to go to the end zone. It's not their fault that the offense is making up the joint like that.
Well, right, yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, the offense isn't putting the defense in any good positions, and the fact that the offense can't really generate many points. I mean, it's not even the fact that I take that back, not putting up points, is that they're not getting any separation. There was a separation against Old Dominion. Obviously, they fell to Boston College. No separation from Furman. Both of those games should have been by bigger margins than it was, And I'm
that Boston College loss looks a lot worse now that Kansas blew them out. That looks like a bad loss now to me.
Yeah, well, the fact that Boston College just got killed by Kansas, that's definitely a bad loss. Which, of course, we know, to me, bad losses, good wins, bad losses, they don't matter, in my opinion, unless you're in college football playoff discussion. For a team like Virginia Tech, we know they're not going to the playoff unless barring some unbelievable streak of wins, they win out or something. But unless you're trying to compete for a spot like that, you're just looking to get to the postseason. You're looking to get to 6 wins, maybe win 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there. And looking at your schedule, you should beat Rhode Island, so that's a 3rd win there. Georgia Tech is certainly a winnable game despite being on the road, so possible 4. Pittsburgh hasn't looked impressive to me. 5, Duke at home, 6. So this team still has the chance to go bowling. They've got to defend home field though, because I don't see them beating.
Remember, they have to win
7. You're right. Excuse me. Yeah, 7 because of Rhode Island and yeah, you're right. Furman and Rhode Island. So yeah, good catch. So 7. But I still.
That might come back to haunt them, honestly, scheduling those 2 FCS opponents. Because if they have a losing record in conference play, then and they finish 6 and 6, they're missing a bowl game.
Absolutely are. And I don't believe a lot of people don't agree in scheduling FCS games. Period. I'm fine if a team schedules 1. I don't like teams that schedule 2. I just think that's kind of ridiculous. It's a little bit of a cop-out. So, yeah, you're sitting at 2-1 right now. Now you need 5 wins. One of those will be against Rhode Island, we would assume. So 4 after that. And, you got Duke at home, North Carolina at home, Wake Forest at home, and Pittsburgh at home. So there's 4 home games right there. And to me, those are all winnable. They just got to take care of business, defend home field, and maybe pull off an upset on the road or just pull off a win on the road against Georgia Tech.
Yeah. And, the other thing, I didn't have a chance to talk to you about this during the last live call-in show, but our starting center got hurt, and he should be back. But the fact that Brock Hoffman isn't eligible to play this season really upset me when you guys like Justin Fields and Tate Martell who are getting immediate eligibility elsewhere because they didn't get playing time, where this kid transfers to get closer to his mom who was suffering from a tumor in her brain. I don't understand it at all.
Yeah. Hunter, don't even get me started on that because that is obviously something that the NCAA chose to do. And every time I hear it, it infuriates me because you're exactly right. You've got players like Justin Fields and Tate Martell and guys like that in my opinion, and excuse me for saying it, if anybody gets offended, that's fine. They're losers. They're absolute losers because they couldn't win their starting job at their school. So what do? They leave. They don't sit there and try to wait it out and be patient and commit to the program they decide to go to. They leave to go play at another school. And yeah, those guys have talent. But you look at guys like that leave and get automatic eligibility. While a guy like you said, Brock Hoffman, doesn't get eligibility when he has a legit reason. He's not a loser. He's trying to get closer to his family and still play football, and they don't allow that. And they even decided, I don't know if you saw a couple of weeks ago when that news broke, Scott Van Pelt, he does this one big thing on SportsCenter, and he was talking about Brock Hoffman. And apparently the NCAA stated that they didn't allow him to do that because their quotes that his mom was getting better, that his mom was doing just fine, and that he didn't really need to transfer for her medical purposes because she was improving. And also the fact that if she was so sick, then why didn't she retire from her job earlier? for that. And obviously the reason was because they're not rich. She's a teacher. They have millions of dollars in medical bills. And so for the NCAA to say things like that to a family that obviously is dealing with such a painful and difficult time, and to assume that they know everything and are going to say this to a guy that is going for a real reason, it infuriates me. The NCAA is a joke, and they're a corrupt business.
Yeah, I mean, that was very insensitive on their part. But last thing, real quick, I watched UCF against Stanford, and boy, did they look good. And it really upsets me when people talk about their strength of schedule or lack thereof. And you talked about Clemson and their weak schedule. So it's not UCF's fault that Stanford isn't as good as they were in years past, because when they scheduled them, they were conference champions. So I get really upset when people say, well, UCF hasn't played anybody. But it's not their fault that their league, doesn't have as many good teams as, say, the SEC.
Absolutely. And that's the same thing we were talking about earlier with Clemson and their strength of schedule. It's not Clemson's fault that the rest of the ACC is terrible. Same thing for UCF. It's not UCF's fault that the rest of the American Athletic, and the American Athletic isn't terrible by any means. There are some good teams in there. But, of course, they're nowhere near as elite as the teams in the SEC. But I truly believe it's about time. If UCF were to run the table this season, go undefeated, win the American Athletic, it's about time they deserve to get into the college football playoff. Find me a team. I don't care from what conference it is. Find me a team that can, for 3 years in a row, can go undefeated in the regular season and then win their conference championship game. And then when they do that, either win or really compete in their bowl game. They beat Auburn 2 years ago. They lost to LSU by 8 last year. They blew a 14-3 lead, so they were in that game. Find me teams that can do that. There aren't many, if any at all. So I agree with you that they deserve a shot. And that win over Stanford, by the end of the year, if Stanford isn't as good as many people thought, they're 1-2 right now, could be 1-3 if they lose to Oregon, they'll say that win over Stanford's not impressive because Stanford had a bad year. And I don't want to hear that, because Stanford is still, in recent years, has been an elite team under David Shaw. It's still a team from a Group of 5 conference, and UCF didn't barely beat them. They beat them by like 20-plus points. And so I 100% agree with you. They are scary good, and they deserve their chance.
Yeah, there's always an excuse for them, not to go to the playoffs. And the other thing people say is, well, if they go to the playoffs, they're just going to get hosed by Clemson or Alabama. Well, that's what's happened the last 2 or 3 years. So
exactly.
What's the difference?
Exactly. The playoff semifinals have been absolute garbage the past few years, with the exception of that thrilling Rose Bowl between Georgia and Oklahoma. Outside of that, Clemson has annihilated their teams. Alabama has annihilated theirs. And it's, so you're right. What is the difference? Because and they'll say, well, we don't know what could happen this year between Alabama and Oklahoma, or Alabama and Ohio State. Okay, maybe. But you know what? I would love to see how UCF would fare against, because you know what? There's no harm done. If Clemson kills UCF, if Alabama kills UCF, okay, they probably would have done the same to one of those other teams anyway. So, like you said, very good point. So just give them their chance, because I know they're not going to be happy with going to a New Year's Six bowl game. They want a chance to try to really play the big dogs, and they certainly deserve it.
Yeah, they definitely do deserve it. And their speed on offense and defense, it is so good. They have speed at every single position, and their running backs, Adrian Killens and Otis Anderson, Greg McCray, they have a really nice stable of running backs. They have Gabriel Davis, their wide receiver. So, I love their true freshman quarterback, who he actually went to the same high school as Mackenzie Milton, if you didn't know that. So their offense is explosive. Yeah,
it's amazing. And I think they get another win this weekend against Pittsburgh. So that's another win against a Power 5 opponent. Not necessarily elite, but it's still a Power 5 opponent. So, you're exactly right.
Great. Well, I'll let you go, man. Thank you so much for taking the call. And I'll be rooting for your Red Bulls this weekend.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. Thank you for calling in. Always good talking to you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Have a good one.
You too. All right, guys, so that was Hunter. Of course, always good talking to him. Big Virginia Tech fan, but knows a lot about football. Love talking to him. Tef, I'm going to get to all of y'all's questions. Don't worry. I want to hear from Nick. Nicholas, if you're still on the line, give us a call. I'll know your number, so make sure you give us a call, because I apologize for not getting to you earlier. Does Arizona State deserve to be in the top 25? And Tef, I'm going to say yes. For now, I'm going to say yes. They're taking care of business, man. They are taking care of business across the board. And Nicholas is calling in. I'm going to finish my analysis on that, and then we're going to take Nick's call.
Call from
Nick.
All right, Nick, I'm going to put you on hold for 1 second, but it won't be too long, all right?
All right, bro.
All right, so Tef, to finish up on that, they do because they went on the road to Michigan State, and took care of business. And they scored the lone touchdown with 50 seconds left. It was a very sloppy game, and people will say that it was controversial, which it was. 12 men on the field, and Arizona State should have been called for the leaping penalty that was not called, but they still could have won that game. It's human error. It happens. I hate that for Michigan State fans. I know that was my team. I wouldn't be sitting here and saying that's human error, but the fact of the matter is that it is. But they do deserve to be ranked in the top 25. I'm a huge fan of Herm Edwards. They are contender guys in the South. Utah, I believe, is in there. Utah's in there. You've got USC in there. That game this Friday night between the two will, if USC wins that, they're 2-0 in conference play, having already beaten Stanford. But Arizona State should be taken seriously. Benjamin, one of the best running backs in the Pac-12. Got Jaden Daniels, a true freshman quarterback, doing this stuff already for the Sun Devils. I mean, he's going to be there for, 3 years at least? So Herm Edwards is building something. He was building something last year, and people are quick to point out, they got off to a fast start last year, beat Michigan State, and the next week lost to San Diego State. I think it's a different year for them. I think it's a very different year for them. So I do believe, Tef, that they do deserve to be ranked in the top 25. I think they're a top 25 team. They didn't show they were one of the elite teams, but they were going up against one of the, I think, better defenses in college football in Michigan State. Pac-12 defenses aren't going to be like Michigan State for the rest of the season. They can put up the points. They will put up the points. And this young quarterback and young offense is going to get better every single week. It's scary to think about. So they are a top 25 team, no doubt in my mind. We're going to talk to Nicholas real quick, and then I'm going to scroll back up and hit the rest of the comments, work our way down, and then we'll slowly wrap up this live stream. But I want to talk to Nick real quick. Nick, how's it going, man?
Going good, bro.
All the way down from Jacksonville, is that right?
Yeah.
All right, good deal, man. How's it going down there?
All right, man.
All right. So what's on? I saw you ask a question earlier. I think it was you talking about the Arkansas quarterback situation. But if that's not what you were still going to ask, then I'm all ears.
It's that too. I also got another question, bro. What do you think about my dogs in the Notre Dame game that's coming up?
Yeah. No.
Crowd?
Yeah, it's going to be an amazing crowd. Like we mentioned earlier, as one guy said, you're going to have 200,000 people on the outside, and you're going to have 90,000 people on the inside, Sanford Stadium. And I'm thrilled for that game, man. You look at that. I've said it over and over again. If you watched our playoff video, or if you watched our analysis on that game, if you watched our prediction video, I've said that we were so lucky to be seeing another top 10 matchup. We saw two top 10 matchups now in the first 4 weeks: LSU, Texas, and now Notre Dame, Georgia. But for this game, I'm sure you'll be happy to hear that I do think Georgia takes care of business. In my opinion, there's almost no doubt in my mind that Georgia is going to win this game. I will be very shocked, as I'm sure most of the nation will be, if Notre Dame wins this game. But I will say that I don't think Georgia just runs away with it. I think everybody's saying Georgia is going to beat them by 28 points or something like that, and I just don't think.
I'm hearing Georgia 52 and Notre Dame 24. Come on, man.
Yeah, it's just, and I'm sure you would love that. I'm sure many Georgia fans would love to see that, but I just.
Yeah, I would love that.
Right, sure, but the problem is Notre Dame is still a top 10 team in the country, and people like to say they're overrated, and that's fine. And this will show, I think, even if Notre Dame loses this game, they lose it by a small margin. And I'm thinking if they lose that game by 10 or less, they cover the spread. I think it's a respectable showing for them. Of course, if they win, they absolutely deserve to be taken seriously. But the biggest thing for them, Nick, is Notre Dame's rushing defense has to step up. And I don't know, after allowing 212 rushing yards to New Mexico, I don't know if they're going to be able to fix that rushing defense in a week going up against DeAndre Swift in that dominant Georgia rushing game.
Yeah, man, it's going to be a fantastic game. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm thrilled for it too. That's of course the game I want to have on my big screen on Saturday night. So top 10 matchup, college game day, playoff implications. I mean, honestly, you can't ask for anything better.
Man, what's your idea on this Michigan-Wisconsin game? Do you think Michigan will win?
Yeah, right now I am picking Michigan. We picked them in our prediction video that we posted a couple days ago, and right now I'm sticking with that. I'm not absolutely, of course, taking that game against the spread. That's one that I'm too scared to take. Because I'm not going to be shocked. I will not be shocked if Wisconsin takes care of business. But a lot of people didn't like to hear it. But I do believe this Michigan team has college football playoff talent. I believe that talent's there. It hasn't been shown. They struggled against Middle Tennessee. They struggled against Army. And those aren't elite teams, but they're, I think, better than what Wisconsin faced in Central Michigan and South Florida. This game being in Wisconsin, it's going to be a big one. It's going to be a big one. And home field advantage plays a huge role. Being at 11 o'clock plays a huge role. But Michigan's defense, guys, I still think is legit. I still think it's elite. And I'd like to see them, for them to win this game, bottle up Jonathan Taylor and force Jack Cohn, who has thrived in his first two games, but force him to win this game through the air. I don't think he's going to be able to do that. And I think Michigan's offense finally wakes up, and I do think they win this game in a very close one.
Okay. Yeah, I got Michigan too. I'm not a little bit believer in Wisconsin right now.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is if Wisconsin wins, they're Big Ten title contenders and they're college football playoff contenders, and that ruins Michigan's season. If they beat Michigan, Michigan is done for the Big Ten title hopes and done for the college football playoff. If Michigan wins, that really, I think, gets a lot of the haters off their back and shows that they're still legit, you know?
Yeah. But, man, as for my Arkansas question, what was your idea when they decided to go with Nick Stark over Ben Hicks? And do you at least see Arkansas actually making a bowl game this year, or at least getting an SEC, at least 2 SEC wins?
Yeah, look, first off, Chad Morris made the perfect decision in starting Nick Starkel. He should have started Nick Starkel back in week 1 against Portland State. He should have started Nick Starkel against Ole Miss. I firmly believe that Arkansas could have won that game against Ole Miss had Starkel been playing the entire game. He was just too stubborn to make up his mind. He was too stubborn to let Ben Hicks play, who, of course, he coached at SMU. But the offense showed life against Colorado State. It was there. It looked so much better with Nick Starkel. So he's the man. And I said that at the beginning of the season. If you go back and watch our Razorback prediction video, I said Ben Hicks will start. I said by the end of the season, Nick Starkel will be your starter. It will be the Razorback starter. And that's exactly what's happened. I knew that from the day one. It's just I knew Morris wasn't going to wake up and make that decision. As for your bowl game question, Arkansas should beat San Jose State. They should beat Western Kentucky, so they would have 4 wins by that point. Like you said, they need 2 wins in SEC play. And I think those wins in SEC play could come against Mississippi State. I think one could come against Missouri. And I'll even go out there and say that one could possibly come against Kentucky on the road. 2 of those games are at home. One of them's on the road. They just need to win 2. If the offense plays the way they did against Colorado State, and I know it's just Colorado State, but if they play the way they did then, and the defense continues to improve because they did not play well against the Rams, but if they do, then Arkansas can go bowling. I'm not calling for it yet. I'm still thinking 5-7. But if I see something differently, especially if they take care of business against a Kentucky or Mississippi State, then it's time to start talking about bowl eligibility.
All right, man. Another question. Do you also think that Joe Burrow is a Heisman contender?
I do. I absolutely believe he is.
Do you think LSU will at least go undefeated before the Alabama game, or do you think they slip up a game?
Look, I don't think they slip up before Alabama. I think I may have had them slipping up prior to no, I didn't actually. I have them at 11-1. So yeah, I do. Because if you look at their schedule, Nick, who would they lose to? I'm going to pull that up real quick before we end this call. But Florida is not going to be as good, I don't think, without Felipe Franks. I know he's been very inconsistent. I get that, but he's gone, and I think that's going to really hurt the Gators. And LSU hosts that in Death Valley. Mississippi State's not going to beat LSU. They couldn't beat Kansas State on their home turf. They're not going to beat LSU on their home turf. And Auburn has to come to Death Valley, and I truly believe that Auburn is overrated. And even if they beat Texas A&M and change my mind on that, I still don't think they have what it takes to come into Baton Rouge and win. LSU beats Vanderbilt. They beat Utah State. They beat Florida. They beat Mississippi State. They beat LSU. They get a bye, or they beat Auburn. They get a bye week going into Alabama. So yeah, I think they're unbeaten when they face off against Bama in the second weekend of November.
Because, man, I was looking at Joe Burrow's numbers, like, it has changed tremendously since last year. I mean, like, wow, they're swinging the ball around like crazy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, and that's hard to believe. Once again, coming from a LSU-led offense, seeing an LSU offense throwing the ball this well. Usually they're known for their running game and defense. This is pretty unbelievable. It's really something special is brewing down in Baton Rouge.
And I also believe, man, I think Joe Brady will be the head coach or an offensive coordinator somewhere. Because I don't think things in the league are doing it. I think it's mostly Joe Brady.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I'd wholeheartedly agree with that. So, but I'm excited to see how LSU plays out. They're a really fun team to watch this year, and I'm curious to see if they can keep it up and maybe have another top 5 matchup between Bama and LSU in November.
I think so too, man. Thanks for my call, bro. I really appreciate it.
You got it, man. Thanks for calling in. All right, so of course, Nicholas all the way down from Jacksonville. Always good to hear from him. The Marshall, I've seen your question a million times. Give me some time, man. I'm going to answer it. Where's College Game Day going to go for Week 5? Assuming both of the teams win, I would like to say they're going to go to. I got the lineup pulled up here. Maybe Nebraska for Ohio State and Nebraska. I think that's where they could go. There's a chance that also if people take care of business, then they could go to Utah. If Utah defeats USC and Washington State defeats UCLA, then you would have a top 25 matchup, a top probably 20 matchup between Washington State at Utah. So there's a chance they could go there. I really think those are the only 2 matchups, looking at it right now, that game they could go to. I think Nebraska would probably be more exciting, assuming they take care of business against Illinois. Be 3-1 versus an undefeated Ohio State, a potential big upset game. Really show the hype around Nebraska, but I don't know. I think it's going to be Nebraska or Utah. Lean towards Nebraska right now, but if they don't take care of business, I think Utah might be the place to go. And they would certainly deserve it if they beat USC. Savage Cabbage 13, Tulane 1. Obviously have not been watching, so I'm going to have to go back and watch the highlights of that, because if that's the case, it was a phenomenal comeback. And a horrible, horrible start for Dana Holgorsen now, sitting at 1-3, but of course 2 of those losses coming to Oklahoma and Washington State. Eli, you and me both. I thought Houston would be a lot better this year. I actually had Houston going 7-5, I think it was, still making the American Athletic Conference championship game. A lot of that due in part just because of their horrible and very difficult strength of schedule. Non-conference. I never had them beating Oklahoma and Washington State. Of course, they didn't. And then you got games against Memphis and UCF and guys like that down the road that I just didn't really have a lot of faith in them pulling off those wins. I'm going to go through the rest of these comments here, and then we'll try to wrap things up. But I want to make sure I hit everybody's questions that had them. Let's see who we have here. Comic Dude 45. Fire Chris Ash if we lose on Saturdays. Of course, we're going to Rutgers. Rutgers playing Boston College. I know if DM was on the line, I know he's probably fast asleep, starting this thing at 9, him being way out on the East Coast. But I know if he was here, he would have some comments on that as well. But Comic Dude, you're right. I think you can't fire him after the game against Boston College, but that's basically going to be, it's over. Because Boston College is a winnable game. I don't expect Rutgers to blow out Boston College. I don't expect Boston College to blow out Rutgers. They're only like 8-point favorites going into this game. But after seeing what Kansas did to BC at Boston College, it gives me a lot of faith, a lot of hope that Rutgers can take care of business as well. They should be able to. They should at least keep it close. With the game being at home, it almost feels like a must-win for a Rutgers team that's probably not going to go bowling, but beating a Power 5 opponent and not a bad one, that's a major step, I think, in the right direction. Eli, Maryland actually upsets Pedophile State. Of course, we get into Sandusky talk, and we'll just skip through all of that. We'll leave that just to the people in the chat. But I don't know. Maryland, of course, that's going to be a trendy upset pick if their offense can get back on track after a bad performance against Temple. Let's see who else we got. Super Dude, 3121 Alec. Of course, always glad to hear. Hope you guys are doing well up in Seattle. Always good hearing from you. Hope Isaac is doing well, too. Hope everything's going well for you guys if you're still on the line. And let's see right now. Stephen Smith, of course, always good to hear from you. You were talking about the playoff expansion, and I want to talk a little bit about that. Do I think the playoffs should expand to an 8 teams in the playoff? If you disagree, why do you think it would be a bad idea to expand to 8 teams? Well, unfortunately, I don't disagree. I agree that should be expanded to 8 teams. I'm tired. Look, a 4-team playoff is not a playoff. I've never thought that. That's really, the guys, you're taking the Final Four. I'm not saying that like March Madness, we have to have a 64, 68 team playoff. We don't need that. But this is the equivalent of going to college, in my opinion, going to college basketball, saying we've got the top 4 teams in the country here. We're going to look at their strength of schedule. We're going to look at their quality of wins. We're going to see if they won their conference tournament, whatever. Throw them in, Final Four, here we go, done. And there's way more teams in college basketball. I understand that. But what does that do? Because we've seen so many times, and just bear with me, we've seen so many times in college basketball where teams that aren't supposed to even get past the round of 32 make a run to the Final Four. Loyola Chicago, George Mason, UConn multiple times, Kentucky a few years ago when they were an 8 seed. And that's why March Madness is so great, because teams that maybe shouldn't be in the Final Four get there. Now, and I'm not saying, once again, that we need to have like a 64-team playoff. But if you make an 8-team playoff, you can take your top 4 teams in the country and however they want to format it. Maybe it's taking automatic bids due to conference champions, and like maybe the top 5 from the Power 5 and then some at-larges. I don't care how they do it. But with the top 8 teams, UCF would get in there. UCF would get in there. A couple of years ago, TCU and Baylor would have gotten in there. Last year, Georgia would have gotten in. Ohio State, a couple of years ago, would have gotten in. Those teams would have made it. And then maybe what happens? Maybe the number 1 seed, maybe it's Clemson or Alabama, maybe they lose. Well, then that really shows, because a 14 playoff does absolutely nothing. And like we were talking over the phone earlier, the semifinal games have been absolute garbage. You know when you're going into the college football playoff who's going to win those games. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be Clemson or Alabama. Clemson's 1, Alabama's 2, reverse them, whatever. Unless they're playing each other in the semifinals, you know it's probably going to be another Clemson-Bama, more than likely. Not always. But I think we all knew last year that Oklahoma had no chance against Alabama, and I think we all knew last year that Notre Dame really didn't have much of a chance against Clemson. So what's the point? Expand it to 8, and maybe you see some teams that are good upset a team and get to the Final Four, get to the national championship game. A 14 playoff is not a playoff. An 18 playoff is what we need. But the people are too stubborn to expand it. And if we do expand it, it's not going to happen until like 2026 or 2027. And it's just, by that point, who cares? It frustrates me. It really, really frustrates me. Really, really frustrates me. I'm sorry for the rant, but Stephen, absolutely. It should be expanded to 8 teams. 4 teams is not a playoff. Maybe it's better than the old BCS system where they just took the 2 teams in the BCS rankings. Maybe. Because, the playoff talk, I really think, started after Alabama and LSU met in the national championship and Oklahoma State got snubbed. I think that's really when the wheels started turning for people to get rid of something like that and start a playoff that would prevent something like that. But guess what? It didn't work. Alabama and Georgia still met in the national championship a few years ago. So if you were trying to eliminate, 2 teams in the same conference playing in the national championship game, guess what? It didn't work, and it won't be the last time that happens either. 8 teams is the way to go, and it shouldn't happen in 10 years, shouldn't happen in 8 years, it should happen in the next 3. It's not that hard to start an 18 playoff, but of course we like to overcomplicate everything. And a lot of that is credit to big money people, and a lot of that's credit to the NCAA who doesn't know what the hell they're doing with the majority of their entire corporation. Money isn't everything. Once again, excuse the rant. And Stephen, yes, of course, always happy to answer your question. Excuse the rant, excuse the anger, but I'm so fed up with it. Just very fed up with it, very tired of it. Jarvis Bryant, good to have you. Sorry I've been turning in on my TV. Love the content. I really appreciate you, Jarvis. Thank you for watching us, man. If you're watching us on the big screen, that's even better. That makes me feel really good. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. And Barry Dump, it's his first time watching the channel, and he's really enjoying it. And you wanted a shout out? I'm more than happy to give you a shout out, Barry. So thank you for watching us. If you haven't already, Barry, go ahead and subscribe. For all of you guys, most of you have, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button. We appreciate you guys once again watching the show. Jarvis, how do I feel about the LSU Vandy game? LSU wins that game big. Vandy's coming off a bye week, but they're going to be no match to shut down this unbelievable potent passing attack from LSU. Even though it's in Nashville, I just don't see LSU taking care of business, or Vanderbilt taking care of business in this one. The spread, I think, is 23 points. So I think it'll be a very big moral victory if Vanderbilt can cover the spread in Nashville on Saturday. Tef, after the show, I'm going to watch your video on Colorado and make a decision about Colorado versus Arizona State. Hey, please do. And like you've done in the past, man, Tef, always feel free to email me. And the same for everybody else with questions or comments, concerns, whatever. Especially if you're signed up on our website for either the newsletter or the expert picks, feel free to send us an email because we're always going to answer your email. We will always get back to you within the day. So, Tef, I always want to hear from you if you've got any questions. One of my top subscribers and top viewers, no doubt. Cyclone Mitch, apparently it was a good game between, if I'm not mistaken, between Tulane and Houston. I'm going to have to go watch the rerun here in a second. I'm very happy to be doing this right now, but I'm kind of shocked and upset that I missed this great Houston Tulane game. And Cyclone Mitch, body armor is the way to go. Absolutely. This is my favorite one, the strawberry banana, you know. They got a huge store at A-State for this, for body armor, and I go to town on it. So we're going on a pink out today. LA Hawks, 22. First, before I answer your question, apparently I missed out. Cyclone Mitch, thank you for that. As soon as I get done, I'm going back and watching the highlights. I think I've got it recorded. So I'm going to make sure to go catch everything from that Tulane game. And maybe have some analysis on that later on. LA Hawks 22. What are your thoughts on Iowa after the Iowa State game? Look, I'm not fully sold on the Hawkeyes. I think they're absolutely a West contender. And we've been saying since the preseason that the West is wide open. We know the West is between, Nebraska is a contender, Wisconsin, and Iowa. We thought Purdue was, and now Purdue is not looking too high. But still, Iowa shouldn't have won that game against Iowa State. Look, football, it was a heads-up play. It was a bonehead play by Iowa State, but it was a good play by Iowa. They muffed the punt. It was, it's football 101. You get away from the punt. The guy who's receiving was supposed to clear his guys out of the way, and they didn't do that. And it resulted in an Iowa win. I want to see Iowa play against better competition. Not saying Iowa State's not good, but I want to see how they do in Big Ten play. That's the word I was looking for. Let's see how they do in Big Ten play. Can they beat Penn State? Can they beat Wisconsin? Can they beat the Big Ten opponents? If they do, then they're legit. Maybe they're a Big Ten title contender, and if they win some big ones, maybe they're a dark horse college football playoff contender. They did that a few years ago, back in 2015. Ran the table, went undefeated all the way until that conference championship game where they narrowly lost to Michigan State. And Iowa, despite only having one loss, and that being in the conference championship game, didn't get in the playoff, of course, due to a weaker strength of schedule. So, yeah, something to keep in mind. Stephen Smith, do I think Iowa State could surprise the Big 12 and win the conference outright? If they do, they can make the playoffs. They're in the scenario right now where Iowa State basically needs to win out. Iowa State, if they want to maybe get into the play, they can win the conference outright, sure. But they can still got to beat Oklahoma. They still got to beat Texas, TCU. Baylor next week is not a sleeper team and not a team that you should overlook. And LA Hawks, absolutely, always happy to answer your question. But they would have to win out and, of course, win the Big 12, which would mean once again beating Oklahoma or Texas more than likely again in the Big 12 championship game. So, no, I don't think they can win it outright. I don't think they can make the playoffs. I think they can win the Big 12 in the conference championship game by getting there. that would require them to pull off an upset over Oklahoma or Texas or maybe both, but I just don't see that happening. I haven't beaten Texas right now. That's subject to change, but they still have a shot at the Big 12 championship game. They lost to Iowa. It's not a conference game, so they're still in the hunt for that. And, of course, always happy to answer your question as well. The train. The train. Did I ever play football? Maybe in high school, something like that? Yeah. Yeah. I played a little bit. Obviously not going to play in college. I mean, not good enough to make it to the D1 league or D1 or at that level, of course. But, yeah, I used to play a little bit of football. It was more on the defensive side more than anything is where I was best at. We've had this question asked before. We had a very, very small team. So a lot of people ended up playing both sides of the ball, both sides of the football. So I played a little bit of like defensive tackle, defensive end, but also played a little bit like fullback and stuff like that. Believe it or not, I was a little huskier than I am now. So I was playing some of the bigger roles on our team. But I had a blast. I wish I kept it up. Wish I stuck with it. It was always a good time. Just being out there with the team, just being out there on the field. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind the heat. I didn't mind getting hit. I loved it. It was a lot of fun. I wish I stuck with it. But yes, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think that surprised a lot of people when I told them that too. Savage Cabbage 13. Who's the best team in the Conference USA? Florida International just lost to Tulane, or they did lose to Tulane by 40. Right, that was back in week 1. I think the best team in the Conference USA right now is Southern Miss. I think Southern Mississippi is a pretty dang good football team. I have them winning the Conference USA if I'm not mistaken. So right now I've got them in there, but also, of course, don't sleep on UAB, who's playing extremely well once again under Bill Clark. Eli Arbeza, and once again, guys, we're going to start wrapping this up shortly, but I want to make sure we get to all these questions. Thoughts on the Mormons versus the Huskies? The game is in Mormon land. I love it, Eli. You never refer to them as BYU. It's always the Mormons. I can't say that. I can't say that on air, coming from me, but you can. The BYU, I have to get my thoughts together. BYU, great wins against Tennessee and USC. Thrilling wins against Tennessee and USC. But what quality of opponents do we have there, honestly? Tennessee is probably the worst team in the SEC right now. And USC, that was a better win, I think, than Tennessee. USC, of course, without their quarterback. Although I'm not going to dog USC because right now I have them beating Utah, so I'm not going to take anything away from that win that BYU got. But I don't think Washington falls to the Husky or to the Cougars. I just don't see it happening. Even though it's at BYU, I do not see it happening. Jacob Easton's going to be too much. That's the first legit quarterback that BYU has faced outside of Tyler Huntley. And, of course, that game got called early. And Utah's defense dominated that game once again. Jacob Easton, that passing attack is going to be really tough. And Washington's defense is once again one of the better in the Pac-12. Yes, they lost to California. I get that. But I just don't think BYU has enough to beat Washington at home. I think their luck runs out. But going 2-2 in that span, I had them going 0-4. I didn't think they'd beat Tennessee. That was, of course, before I saw Tennessee lose to Georgia State. And I didn't think they beat USC. That was, of course, before JT Daniels went down. I didn't change my predictions on either. So 2-2 in that 4-game stretch, one of the most difficult in the country, not a bad start whatsoever. Tef, I love this question right here. Right now, who wins? Florida State or Tennessee? Golly, they should make a bowl game for that matchup. My goodness. They should make a bowl game for just some of the worst teams in college football. That'd be a great matchup. I think I give the slight edge to Florida State right now. The slight edge to Florida State. At least Florida State, they're 1-2. At least they've given a better opponents a battle. They should have beat Boise State. Probably should have beat Virginia. They barely beat Louisiana Monroe. That one was bad. That one was horrible. But I'd probably give the edge to Florida State. Even if that game was at Neyland Stadium, I'd probably give the slight edge to Florida State. So horrible matchup between two horrible teams this year in 2019, but I give the edge to the Seminoles. See what else we got here. Let's see. Making sure I'm not missing anybody here. Last two questions I'll take. A couple, actually. Tucker Tarleson, how long until Baylor has a real shot at the Big 12 title? This year, actually, or next year? Baylor's offense is looking great. Baylor's offense is looking real, real good. Let me tell you what. Now, not back to the old Art Briles days. Those were fun to watch for the Bears. But they're looking good. They have a chance to beat Iowa State next week. I think they can hang with Oklahoma and Texas. They dropped 33 on Oklahoma last year and narrowly lost to Texas last year. And I know, injuries, whatever. Maybe that's why it was so close, but still. So as soon as this year, Baylor, if the things go their way, could be in contention for a Big 12 title. But I think next year could be the year they really break through, and maybe you're looking at anywhere between 8 and 10 win team for the Bears. And that would be huge, considering just the downfall of the Baylor program after the Art Briles scandal. To be built back up like that under Matt Rule in a span of, what would that be now? 4 years. He's in his third year, so fourth year would be next year. It's a pretty quick turnaround for a program that was deep down the dumps and went 1-11 in his first year. The Train, you seem like a great teammate. You would get in all the opponents' heads. I tried. But I appreciate that. I really do. That means a lot. And, I would hope my former teammates could attest to that. It's a mind game. I was never a guy to kind of start anything. Kind of like Andrew Luck, you get it. A guy gets popped, and the guy gets up and says, "Good hit," or "Great play." Not mouthing off or anything. That it's weird. It's not what you would expect out of an opponent. So, but no, I really appreciate that. It was a lot of fun. I wish I could get back out there and do it again. Florida State, Tennessee. Who wins if they're playing this Saturday? Florida State still. Tef likes Tennessee. He thinks Tennessee still. But I think I'll still take Florida State. Now let's see what else we got here. What else? What other comments? Eli Arbeza, this might be a great year to be a Mormon. Maybe so. And Henry H., who I think, if I'm correct, he changed his name from Tucker Tarleson. At least they have the same profile picture. You got it, though. I appreciate you more than anything else. Thank you for all the work you put in. We don't mind putting in the work to get responses and to analyze college football with you guys. So appreciate you reaching out. Thank you for that. And, thank you for watching, man, especially this late at night. Everybody's choosing Tennessee here in this hypothetical Florida State-Tennessee matchup. What's wrong with you? What's going on? Florida State's been playing terrible, yeah, but Tennessee's, I think, has been worse. Although Mark making a good point. Maybe he's right. Willie will just find a way to lose. Maybe it'd be great if Willie could teach his players to line up in the right direction. Maybe we start there. Maybe that's where we start. Make sure when your wide receiver lines up the correct way down the field, not the opposite direction. But, yeah, I still take Florida State slightly. Maybe Tennessee for a lot of you guys, but I think I'd take Florida State just based on quality of opponents and the fight that they've given those opponents in Boise State and Virginia, despite both those games being losses. So obviously the calls have definitely died down, but we got some great discussion tonight. And as it is 10:45 on my end, and we've been running for an hour 45, and I'm sure for some of you guys it's 11:45, 12:45, 9:45, wherever it is, getting late. That's the point I'm trying to make. So guys, we are going to go ahead and conclude this live stream as the chat is slowly dwindling down. The calls, like I said, have slowly slowed down. But we want to thank you guys for joining us. Ricky Ricardo, I list it. It just slips my mind. But I'll tell you what, Ricky. Comic Dude 45 made a great point. We're going to put our number in the description for every single live stream from now on. The number will be in the description. It'll be easier for you guys to access. I'll still put it in the chat, so I apologize for that. That's on me. So, Ricky, come back, please. Next live stream, it'll be possibly as early as next Tuesday for another call-in show. We want to hear from you. So it'll be in the description. It'll be in everything else as well. So, and if you tried twice, I apologize. Obviously, when we get multiple calls in at one time, we don't have multiple phones to fix things up. So that's something that we're going to have to work on as well. But be back next time, Ricky. We'll make sure to take your call. I'll put it in the description. I'll put it multiple times in the chat, and we'll make sure to get a call from you on the next live stream early next week. As for the rest of you guys, thank you so much for watching us tonight. once again, it was a late night live stream, but we were glad to be back. And we are so happy to hear from you guys. Enjoy your weekend of college football. Kicks off big tomorrow. And it kicked off tonight with apparently a thriller I'm going to have to go back and watch. But a thriller tomorrow between USC and Utah. Huge college football playoff implications kicking off on Saturday. So thank you guys once again. Make sure you continue to like, comment, subscribe. Check out the website where you can sign up for the expert picks and the newsletter if you haven't already. And, of course, go follow us on Reachable, Twitter, Instagram, and everything else. You guys have a great rest of the night. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you early next week.